I never had much interest in seeing the 50 Shades of Grey movies or reading the books for that matter. It's not so much the films themselves, though I didn't think I would like them. I just find the genre to be very played out. I roll my eyes at anything that's preceded by the word erotic, thriller, erotic drama. Like, to me, those are films made for people that watch porn for the story. Like, sorry, man, it really doesn't matter to me how the lady's pipes got broken. Like, just get to the good stuff. You know, if you want to see naked people out there, it's on the internet. The government gives you that shit basically for free. And if it's not free, you can do some digging, and you'll probably find it somewhere for free. Like, I don't need a 2.5-hour film to set up what are probably very, like, 3 out of 10 sex scenes. I'll get off my soapbox here and talk about the films in a second, but that's why I never saw them. But I think with this series on YouTube, I started it with Harry Potter. I want to go back and revisit a lot of film series from my childhood or early adulthood and see if they hold up as timeless classics or simply staples of their time. I was happy to report with Harry Potter that those are timeless. And I think that those movies are crossing generations where people are going to show them to their kids and show them to their grandkids. And as I said in the video, I'm sure we'll get another adaptation of Harry Potter at some point. But like with any remake or reimagining, those original films aren't going anywhere. I think they hold up very well. I had never seen these. All 3 of them were on Netflix, so I figured I'd watch them. I had a little bit of time over a 24-hour period. And that's where we'll start with 2015's 50 Shades of Grey. You know, when this movie first started, because I expected it to be schlock and I expected it to be smut, I gotta say, I was genuinely impressed by the production value. Sam Taylor Johnson, who directed this is the only one that she directed, at least makes an attempt to do some artistic things with the cinematography. The movie takes place in Seattle. The main character's last name is Gray. So there is some unique mixing of colors, whether it's the light colors, the dark colors, what have you. They really tried. And so for a few brief minutes, I'm like, okay, maybe this won't be awful. And then the characters started talking. You know, this is going to be the one in this series that I have the most to talk about because the issues that exist in this film carry over in the other 2 movies. Like, they don't really retcon or fix anything. It's, in that way, it's a consistent series, consistently done. And really where it starts is that anytime you have a film or film series where romance is one of the central plot points, the one thing that you have to get right is that your 2 main actors have to have some sort of connection. People like to use the word chemistry. They have to have some sort of chemistry with each other. If that works, then you can often overlook some cliches or things that you often see in romantic comedies or romantic dramas. I'll give you an example. Last year, there was a movie that came out, Anyone But You, with Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. I didn't see it, but the people I know who saw it and enjoyed it said, yeah, look, this doesn't reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of stupid stuff in it, but you know what? Glenn Powell's in it. He's really likable. Sydney Sweeney's in it. And so the 2 of them together, I enjoyed seeing them fall in love. The issue that exists right away with 50 Shades of Grey is that it is very apparent that neither one of these people should be together. Neither one should be with the other person. And not only that, they are both wildly unlikable characters. She, Anastasia Steele, she's just stupid. I mean, she's the worst kind of person to me, because throughout the movie and throughout the series, she's like, oh no, I'm a strong, independent woman, and I study literature, and I'm not going to take crap from nobody. But the second that fucking billionaire dick comes along, it's for fucking 3 movies. Like, and don't get me wrong, she is the least of this movie's problems, because the premise of this series should be that you have a impressionable, soon-to-be out-of-college student who is falls in love and is swept under, what's the phrase? Swept under her feet, swept off her feet by this charismatic, charming billionaire. The problem is Christian Grey makes every decision possible to remove charm and charisma from his personality. Look, I can already read the comments right now, and I get it. I am at least smart enough, definitely as it pertains to films, to acknowledge when somebody has game, when somebody has riz, as the kids like to say. You know, I can watch Ryan Gosling in Crazy Stupid Love and be like, dude, that dude's just got it. Like, I totally understand why women are going to fawn over this guy. And I hoped, I didn't think it would happen, but I hoped coming into this we'd get that kind of character. Yes, he's got a bit of a dark side. Yes, he's into some kinky shit, or, you know, just kind of basically softcore BDSM. He's into some of that. But you know what? If they can present him as someone who in the public eye is kind of cool and suave and charming, I can accept this love story. Right away, it's clear this guy just ain't all there. But the biggest problem beyond that, he just says weird shit to people. He doesn't come across as a suave or smart or charming guy. It's never really established what he does, what business he's in, how he created his billionaire industry. It's just like, yeah, no, he's popular, he's famous, and women like him. I don't feel that bad for Dakota Johnson because she's gone on to be a big enough star. She went on to make Madam Web, and then she fired her agent. I don't think she's a very good actress. I've heard people defend her. She's bad in everything I've seen her in. Social Network, but she was only in that for one scene. I feel bad for the guy playing Christian Grey because I think that he probably read this script and figured the only way to make this god-awful dialogue believable would be to play this rather dark and void of charm. I don't agree with that creative decision, but I get the impression watching all three of these movies that he could actually be a pretty good actor. This is just terrible material for him to work with. You know, I complain a lot, guys, about movies being long and bloated, and I do think that Hollywood as a whole, especially over the last decade plus, has a real issue with pacing with films, because I think that I've seen 2-hour movies that feel like 3-hour movies, hour-and-a-half movies that feel like 2-hour movies. I think Hollywood recently has done a bad job of just stretching the length of movies just for the sake of it. But when it comes to this series, it makes me want to go back and retroactively apologize to some movies that I've called boring, because even films that I've called dull have things going on in them. I might not be engaged by the story or into the character, but they are story beats. I'm telling you guys, if you cut out the montages and the boring sex scenes, there's about a 2-hour narrative in these three movies combined. You know how, like, with Harry Potter and the Hunger Games and Twilight, they split the last book up into 2 movies? This is the inverse of that, where they should have taken all 3 books and made them into one film, because there's just not enough material here. There's no central conflict in this movie. A heavy majority of it is the two of them talking about a contract. For a brief moment, I legitimately thought, I don't think this guy's into BDSM. I just think he gets off on contracts. I think he enjoys reading off contracts. And then I guess what is supposed to be the appeal, like the sizzling part of this steak, so to speak, is the sex scenes. And like, look, you're into what you're into. If you find this stuff hot and awesome, and have at it, you know, everyone's got their thing. I found it completely boring, and I think a big part of it is you get the impression these two actors don't even want to touch each other. So the sex scenes in general are kind of uncomfortable. I'm not going to give this one a rating. I'm going to save my rating for when we get to the end of the last film, because I give all these movies the same rating, essentially. This first one was, you know, it went through you like fast food, which is kind of what these movies are the equivalent of. You get to the second one, 50 Shades Darker, and I the one thing positively, I guess I'll say, that is consistent throughout this entire series is the fact that they at least attempt to give Christian Grey more characterization. He is whether I like the development or not, like, there is legitimate character development. He is a 3-dimensional character, but again, that positive kind of turns into a negative, because to me, one of the appeals of this should be the sex and the sex scenes. The thwack. I'll give you an example of a recent movie that utilized sex and nudity to its advantage. The movie Poor Things with Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo. That movie has more nudity and sex in it than any non-NC-17 film that I've ever seen. But that was part of that character's growth. Part of her story was that she's learning to kind of fall in love with herself and fall in love with the world, and they used nudity and sex as kind of a symbolism for that. Here, this shit's not deep enough to have symbolism. So the appeal should be these two people fucking like wild rabbits, and by the time you get to the second movie, even in the first one, it's very much established, like, he is this way because some legitimately heinous things happened to him when he was a kid. And therefore, it makes, even if you enjoyed the sex scenes in the first movie, it makes the sex scenes in the second movie just unpleasant to watch, because it's like, this guy is totally broken as a human being. I'm not even saying that as like, oh, he's into freaky shit. People are, I don't care what you're into. I really, like, you're into fucking freaky shit, as long as it's not illegal, whatever floats your boat, floats your boat. But the fact is, he's getting off on something that is the result of some horrible things that have happened to him. And so by the time you get to the second movie, it's just a slog to get through because you just kind of feel dirty watching it, and not in the way that you're supposed to, not in the like, ooh, this is sexy type of thing. You just like feel gross. Once they kind of get into his backstory, some of it is legitimate, like borders on interesting, but a lot of it in terms of the execution, like when they bring in his former submissive, and like she's supposed to be scarred and broken, and so what they do is they like ruffle her hair and she just kind of walks around with like wide eyes, like the way that you would tell like a community college student like how to act in a play where she's playing a scarred crazy person. It's just not believable at all. And the thing is, I just watched these movies, guys, and I full attention. Like I was not nodding off. I had good energy going. Like I was ready. I barely remember any of this shit. And then there's a helicopter crash. There's a helicopter crash out of nowhere. And then we get a setup. That's where I laughed, because we get a setup for the third movie. So you get to the third one, and at this point, like, I found myself not buying in necessarily, but just kind of throwing my arms up in the air saying, all right, fine, it is what it is. It's kind of like, you know how in Attack of the Clones, the love story is horribly done and you don't believe for a second that Hayden Christensen and Natalie Portman should be together. But by the time you get to Revenge of the Sith, they are. And it's like, all right, fine, they're together. I can accept it. Despite going against every rule and guideline of modern relationships, these two people love each other. I just kind of got there by the time we got to the third one here, 50 Shades Freed. The third one is easily the schlockiest of the three. It has the most like random stuff. There's a weird car chase in it. There's like a kidnapping mystery element to it. Like there's a robbery at the beginning. It becomes total, hack schlock. But I cannot stress to you the repetitive nature of these movies. Like you guys might think, oh, okay, I'm over exaggerating, and yes, I'm hyperbolic and I'm a baby boy. But at the same time, it is like there's checkpoints the way that there's checkpoints in video games. It is story beat, lame sex scene, story beat, lame sex scene, and then rinse, repeat, recycle until there's some sort of forced conflict at the end of the movie. In this particular case, it's her evil boss from the last film comes back and goes from being a guy who starts off like okay and then becomes slightly creepy, and then by the third movie is murderous. Like he's homicidal. And then there's that. Oh, I forgot about the stupid subplot. There's a reveal at the end that her former boss and Christian Grey were in the same foster care system together, and that is revealed after the conflict is resolved. One, maybe you should have revealed that earlier because it would have added maybe some tension. And two, what a fucking coincidence that she just happens to know both these guys who are in the same foster care system. Like, but the third one to me is bizarrely the most watchable because of those schlocky elements. But I can't recommend watching any of these movies, even as it's so bad they're good, because they're so boring, man. It's just incredible how little happens in these films. So if I had to give them a rating as a whole, the entire series to me is a 3 out of 10. Like, just straight up, I view it all as one story. Like I said, in a bizarre way, it is kind of consistent with itself just because there's not a whole lot of changes in quality. It starts bad and it stays bad. Is it something that is worth revisiting? No, it's not. Not even for being a weird staple of its time. It's a movie that is based around sex, yet is totally sexless. You have two actors who have no chemistry with each other. The dialogue is kind of the only thing that this thing has going for it, and it's only because the dialogue in this is so freaking terrible that it's funny at points. And just going back to what I said earlier, I really think just in their attempt to make Christian Grey more of a character, they made what is supposed to be this movie's fastball, which is the sex, substantially more uncomfortable. And I don't recall a ton of reviews for this series, but like I feel like that's a problem that should have been hammered home a lot more. One, the fact that they're together at all. I mean, they're not right for each other. He is with a change in soundtrack. Like this, the first film becomes a horror movie. Like if you just change the music with the way that he's following her around, he's insanely possessive. And then you find out about his past, and it's just like, it just makes the sex sad. So yeah, don't watch him. You probably haven't seen him, maybe you have, but having now seen all three of them, I couldn't even come away from it understanding the appeal. Like there's certain things I don't like, but understand the appeal of this. No. So That's my trek through the 50 Shades trilogy. We'll find another series here soon, probably one with a little bit less penetration. Though I don't think there is any in this. It's like I said, soft core as hell. Subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to my Patreon, $5 a month for early access to content like this and all other exclusive content. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll see you later. Peace and happiness.